In today's video, you're going to learn how to use the Polygon Reduction Tool to make a unique animation in Cinema 4D. Stay tuned for this one. Hey everybody, it's Nick here again from Greyscalegorilla, giving you the tools, training, and tutorials to help make you a better motion designer. Now, before we get started with today's tutorial, I wanted to remind you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have a lot more videos coming there very soon. We want to make sure you see them. Also, if you haven't checked out our Intro to Cinema 4D series, it's a completely free training series over on our website. I'm going to link it up here and down in the description. We'd love to see you over there. All right, let's get into today's tutorial. We're going to use the Polygon Reduction Tool to make a really unique animation in Cinema 4D. In fact, this is what we're going to make today. All right, this will be a fun one for sure. Now, there's one more thing you need to know before you start to watch this video, and that's that this tutorial was recorded with an earlier version of Cinema 4D. Almost everything will be the same. You'll be able to follow along. I just want you to keep your eye out for one thing, and that's the reflection channel. The reflection channel in Cinema 4D is now called reflectance. So when we get to that point in the tutorial, I want you to keep an eye out and make sure that you're aware that reflectance is where you're gonna start to add all that stuff. We also have a tutorial all about the differences between reflection and reflectance. I'm gonna link that up in the description below, just in case you get stuck at that point. Okay, other than that, we're ready to go. Let's head on into Cinema 4D and let's get animating.
So here we are in Cinema from scratch, and here's how we started it. We grabbed a sphere, and let's see, we used a triangle sphere. Instead of the basic here, we used a icosahedron, I think that's how you say it, and that's got all these triangles, and this is a good start for what we're gonna make. Well, then I think it was Smart Chris or Smart Jack, one of those guys, said, hey, add a displacer first, because what you want to do is you want to add a little bit of movement to the system, and then use the poly reduction after the fact. So we're going to add this displacer effector. I guess it's not an effector. They call these deformers. So these kind of purpley dudes are deformers, and up here, these are effectors under MoGraph. Yes. Okay, so we're going to displace it. We're going to go to shading, shader, noise. And in this case, we're just going to crank it up. We're going to make some like crazy spiky stuff. And always, the key to that really polygonal kind of look is always to just ditch your Fong tag. And as soon as you delete it, you can see it's not trying to round it out. You get these really sharp corners, and you just see every polygon. And that's, you know, kind of what we're going for. And in this case, what we used were two displacers on top of each other that kind of eat into both geometries at the same time. So it actually is deforming, and then this displacer is deforming it on top of the old one. You get a little bit more, I don't know, organic effect if you try to do this. The other thing it allows you to do is change the shader on the second one and get a different look. So let's dig into the shader and maybe crank up the scale and see what happens. You see we get a different kind of movement every time we do that. The other thing we did was add some animation speed. And once we do this, just a little bit, I'm going to go into the other noise, and I'm going to drop that way down as well. Something like 0.1, 0.2 kind of worked out well for us, but we kind of played with it. But here we are. Now we have our basic swarmy, you know, kind of like movement from the polygons. And this was the basic effect. From here, we did the poly reduction. So let's grab that. And here it is, Polygon Reduction. And I think we started it at the bottom of the stack. And then what we did was we animated the reduction strength. And you can see Polygon Reduction takes what you feed it and basically starts stripping away polygons until it's down to basically 0. And then we just animate this. And this is really the core of this animation. You can see how quickly this was set up. So let's go ahead and animate that. Let's start somewhere around, I don't know. Let's just start low and go high, and then we could always adjust it. So here we go. Let's go to frame like 70, crank it all the way up, and hit a keyframe and go back to 0, and let's see what this looks like. Pop, 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 pop. Well, this gave us a certain look, right? And you can see it's really getting kind of jittery and poppy, and that's because the polygon reduction is below the displacement, and it's trying to keep the shape as clean as it can, and that works in some ways, but what I found is if we put the poly reduction first, we get this more really kind of poppy animation that I liked a lot more. You can see the difference. You can go ahead and play around with this on your setup, but you can see this one kind of added a little bit of twitchiness, and if we put it above it, it's a little more solid and a little more, I don't know, it pops a little bit better. So again, this is just the nature of how Cinema runs down through the stack here, and it's going through the hierarchy and doing the poly reduction first, and then displacing instead of displacing and then adding poly reduction. And you can see we do get subtly different effects. So this looked better, and then we ended up with one polygon. In this case, I'm not seeing that one polygon, so let's force it. Let's go to 99 and what I'm going to do is hit Command and hit the little dot there, and that's going to reset that keyframe. So now we have this kind of like single poly it reduces to. So there we go. Perfect. We have our animation. We're starting here, and we go all the way down. Now, if you're following along and you just want to see how to animate this dude, you got it. You have all the tricks right here to go in and build your own system. But of course, we didn't want to just stop here. We wanted to add a little bit more variation. And so it ended up that we played around with some atom array. And Jack, was it you that was yelling out atom array? Pff, it was Jack. Jack said, put an atom array on that thing. And I said, let's do it. So let's do that. We are going to grab atom array, and you can do this with a cloner as well. You don't have to use atom array. You can actually use a cloner and two sets of cloners, one set to the vertex mode, one set to edge mode, and do all that stuff. But in this case, let's just use atom array. What we did was just used a duplicate of this one to throw into atom array, because if you just use the original in atom array, then your original goes away and atom array takes over. So what you do is you just duplicate it. So you have the original and the atom array. I'm pretty sure we've done this in a few other tutorials. But you can see now atom array is adding our cylinders and our kind of spheres to the corners, to the vertexes, and we have our start. Now, we're at the point where we need to light and texture this dude, so let's do that. First thing we need to do is set up some textures. So I'm going to go to New Material, and yeah, I feel like I've been saying this a lot, but I've been using this technique a lot lately, where I'm not texturing with color, I'm texturing with luminance and allowing a little bit more control over the brightness of our materials, especially if we want it more kind of graphic and you're not going for like a photoreal thing. Coloring and basically lighting your scene with luminance gives you a lot of flexibility, and it's really fast to render. So let's go ahead and do that. In this case, we're going to get that nice red material using a Fresnel shader, and using Fresnel with luminance allows you to kind of get some variation in your shading without using actual shadows. So what we could do is maybe take like a darker red and an even darker red, and now it's going to, on the fly, kind of make this texture go from bright red to dark red on the edges, depending on how it's facing the camera. So let's go ahead and add that to our original object, hit render. You can see the ones that are facing the camera are brighter than the ones that are kind of angled off. Let's even make that a little bit more dramatic so we could really see the difference. Yeah, that's starting to be a little bit better. Now let's texture our atom array. And the way we did that was by using a gradient. So instead of using the Fresnel shader and allowing the angle of the camera to pick what color it is, instead I just used a gradient. And in this case, the gradient is going to color these things different colors. And we played around with a lot of different looks, but I ended up on this kind of rainbow effect for the atom array. And of course, you could add whatever you want, but I'm just showing you where I ended up. And I always encourage you to kind of experiment around and play around, because that's where you make something different and learn a little bit along the way. So anyway, here it is. Here's the gradient. Went into gradient. I picked some crazy colors. It was starting to look a little 80s to me. So and I've been on this 80s thing. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's my haircut. Let's go green. And let's go pink. Yeah, sure. All right. So this was applied to atom array. And by default, you're going to get some kind of weird gradients along each item in the atom array. But what I wanted was it to sweep from top to bottom all the way down. And to do that, we had to do a couple things. One is pick the top to bottom gradient. And the other is to, instead of doing VW mapping, instead of mapping it around each item, you're going to use flat, I think is where we ended up. Yes, and so flat does it closely, but now it's tiling, and the reason it's tiling is because our flat projection is just a little bit too small. So let's just scale this up and make sure it's covering most of our object here. And now we hit render, and now we're getting our gradient going from top to bottom. And in fact, I think I went in here and made it diagonal just by going to 2D diagonal using the same gradient, and now it was a little bit more of a variation from top to bottom. It looks like it got flipped, so we could go back around here. There we go. So you could follow it from top to bottom gradient. Cool. So we're getting closer. Let's do a few things. When you're using this luminance mode, to kind of color and texture and light your scene, you're going to get really flat colors, which is nice. But you're also losing a lot of the shading and depth cues that you get from 3D. And always the big workaround for that is to use ambient occlusion. And that, of course, adds some render time here, but we're starting to get some shadowing in the corners. And in fact, let's really crank up our maximum ray length and even our contrast a little bit, and start to really kind of color in those corners there. You can see what we're going after. Okay, what now? From here, let's tweak our atom array. It looks like our atom array is by default giving us kind of larger cylinders that I'm kind of liking. So let's go ahead and tweak those settings. In our atom array, we can turn our cylinders way down. We can even go less than 1, something like 0.5. And in our sphere radius, maybe something similar to something really small. And that's looking a little cleaner to me. What else are we missing? Well, we're missing, first of all, we're missing the nice reflections we have in the video. We're also missing our background. And we're also missing the atom array that's kind of separated from its original. And so the way we do that is to come into your displacer and just offset your strength a little bit. So move your strength a little bit off on each of your displacers. And what that's going to do is it's going to offset your atom array just off your object a little bit. And you can leave it on if you want, but I think that this introduces a little bit more variation, something kind of cool, a little more spiky stuff going on. So we're getting closer. Let's go ahead and add some reflections. Let's add a background, and then let's talk about the compositing tag that was used to just clean this up before render. So you can see now we have everything, blinking, popping on and off, just like we have. And here's the final frame. Boom. All right, let's get this tweaked up. Let's go to our red texture and add some reflection, and of course some Fresnel. And in this case, we're going to set it really low, something like 3 or 4 on the top main reflection, and then something like 5 or 8 on the lower reflection. This is just really subtle reflections for our red channel. And you can see now it's reflecting around, but there's nothing to reflect yet in the scene. Of course, it can reflect on itself, but always when you're dealing with reflections, you need something in the scene to reflect, or else reflections basically don't work. And I have my cheat here, which is my HDRI Studio pack, and I just grab this constantly anymore. I just dump one of these in the scene, and I dump a seamless floor in the scene, and now I have 2 things. I have a floor, right, and a background to color, and I also have something to reflect. So first of all, let's turn off the floor because we don't need that. It's just going to be the background, and the studio rig is fine as right now. We could tweak that later, but now you can see we have reflections. Let's just zoom in real quick. Now you can see we have reflections like right here, popping in, and this is all from the HDR rig that has like a built-in default reflection map around it. So that is helping. Let's color our background. Our seamless floor can be something darker. I think we ended up with like a dark blue to a black gradient, and that's really quick to set up there. That's looking about right. Okay, good. Where else did we end up? So what happened now was that I didn't like the reflections of the atom array on all this red geometry, and I think my reflection may have been a little bit stronger. So let's turn that up so you can see what's going on. Basically, I thought it would look a little bit cleaner if we just got rid of the atom array from reflections. So you see all this little detail that's popping up. Less so here than when oh, here we go. There's an example, and there's an example, and there's an example where it's just started to get a little kind of dirty with all these little stringy reflections all the way around. And the way to get rid of those was to basically add a compositing tag to your atom array and force it to not render in your reflections. So we can do that quickly by going to atom array, tags, compositing tag, there it is, and then turning off a couple things. First of all, it's such a small little render, and it's such a thin little line that we can get rid of ambient occlusion altogether. So we could get rid of ambient occlusion. That's going to speed up our render time. We're also going to get rid of reflection. So two of those things actually sped up render time hugely, and it cleaned up the kind of reflections that came from all these objects. So that's looking pretty good. We do have a little bit of an issue where our texture is not large enough now, and you can see it's getting clipped right there at the top. It just has a hard edge to it. So let's just scale that up a little bit more just to make sure we're covering the whole item. And in fact, we could rotate it more if we wanted to. So we have control over the way the reflection is rotated if we just rotate it this way or that way. And that might give you a little bit more control down the road too. So now we have our gradient going across, we have our reflections, we have everything looking good, and we're pretty much ready to render. Now, the only other thing I did was extend our timeline a little bit so that when it got down to this one polygon, it was just kind of floating around here. I thought that looked kind of cool. And then in the render settings, of course, we have to go to output, set this to something larger. So 1280 by 720 are my settings usually for tutorials, but you could render that larger. And of course, you go to all frames. And whenever I'm dealing with reflections and small little thin lines like that, I'm always turning up the anti-aliasing from geometry to at least 1x1 and 2x2, and even higher if we do a test and it gets a little bit too stringy. I can still see a little bit of kind of crazy bad aliasing on these lines. So you may actually want to turn this up in extreme cases to 2x2 to by 4x4 or something like that. I think these are fine for these renders. Let's double check this, and that's looking pretty good. So then I just framed it, and I just kind of got a good framing. I didn't want anything to get cut off. I didn't mind it being smaller in the frame, and that was it. That was the animation from start to finish. Really quick to set up, really fun to make. And these deformers, I always kind of forget about them, and then somebody tells me one of them and what they do, and then I remember, holy crap, I got to play around more with these. So this was a really fun one to make, and I just want to get this quick tutorial out for you. And I guess before we go, you can render this out, and I did one more pass with it in After Effects, and I just wanted to go over. Actually, I didn't do much in After Effects, so I'm not sure. I did mostly sound in After Effects. I added this tone generator, and you can change the tone. So I basically it's an old Beatles trick where they at the end of what the hell's that record? They basically tell the orchestra, play a crazy note, and by the end of that note, you all end up on the same note, right? You know that song I'm talking about. We'll all sing it at the end. It'll be great. But basically, I could tell this tone generator to pick a bunch of random frequencies, and then they all end up at basically the same frequency or the same note. And 440 is A. 440 is just like a middle A on a piano. It's like and if you want to pick a lower or higher note that's the same A, you just divide or multiply by 2. So in this case, this one goes to about 220 by the time it gets down to it. There it goes, 220, and this one goes to 880. So we're all hitting basically random tone generators that are starting at random frequencies and then all ending up on an A or around an A. And the reason these aren't perfect numbers is because it's a sine wave, and you want a little bit of variation in your tones. In fact, when way off topic now, but when you tune a piano or kind of an instrument that goes multi-octaves, it sounds better if you detune it a little bit and you stretch that tuning out. So I'm just picking random, not random, I'm picking specific numbers, but just off of the bass number, so we get this nice little tone when it finishes. So kind of all messy, 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 and then right when it goes to 1 polygon, I made it go boom, right? So there you go. That's the audio in After Effects. And yes, folks, you can do audio in After Effects. Other than that, we dropped a posterized time on top of it to drop it from 24 frames a second to 12, and that just kind of made it pop even more. And then we used a black solid to fade it out. Here we go. That was real easy.
Thanks again for watching today. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and if you haven't seen our Intro to Cinema 4D series, we think you're gonna love it. It's a completely free training series over at Greyscalegorilla. I'm gonna link it up here as well as in the description. We hope to see you over there really soon. All right, that's it for today. We hope to see you in another tutorial from Greyscalegorilla. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you have a good one. Bye, everybody. Water today, lots of water. Sometimes it's too much coffee. Can't have enough water. Wait, can you?